I still have nightmares about what happened that night. This is my most terrifying experience. I'm not scared of anything. That's what I yelled to my brother as I slammed the door to shut my car. Things have changed since then. I remember his smirk, but he held out my jacket. He spouted off an endless list of things I should be scared of. Skinwalkers, witches, and werewolves. Presented each one as a reason after reason as to why this idea was stupid. Saying I still had some time to flake out, save face. I remember rolling my eyes, snatching my jacket from his grasp, sliding into my car and yelling that I'm not scared before speeding away towards the darkening outline of the mountains. Boy, how I wish I listened. I was wrong, he was right. Let me back up a bit. It was started about 2 days ago. I was out of my mind, depressed, could barely get out of bed. Thought about chucking myself in front of cars, over bridges, off buildings, just dying. I thought about this all the time, and enough was enough. One of the few friends I had suggested that I try solo camping. Said that might clear my mind, that the wilderness, the silence, the solitude would do me good. He gave me a list of spots, some more isolated than others. I decided on the most isolated one. It was about a 3-hour hike from the last campsite far out in the Rocky Mountain National Forest. I remember his face, the surprise and the acceptance. You sure? His voice cracked. I nodded, saying nothing. Okay. I mean, it's a pretty secluded place, especially for a first-time camper. He shrugged. But then again, it's a beautiful spot. It'll definitely give you some perspective, and the night sky out there is insane. I thanked him again and turned to leave. He spoke up again. Hey, don't let that forest spook you, okay? A word of advice from a veteran. Don't go out at night no matter what you hear. You might get totally fucked by a bear or a lion. The drive up the mountains was strangely soothing. The gently curving roads that wove the way through the trees, and soon my mind was eased with a peaceful contemplation. I had decided to forego electronics this trip, even going as far as securing my phone in my glove box. I wanted to be completely free of all that shit, able to focus on the now rather than think about the past or the future. I would be gone for 5 days and 4 nights, enough time for me to hopefully reassess my life and what I'm doing with it. Night was now falling and I silently cursed myself for leaving so late. I sat in my car for a good 30 minutes before deciding it would be too risky hiking 3 hours in near pitch black. There were 4 other tents set up in the lot I was in. I had my own tent up pretty soon. The night passed comfortably. I was surrounded by chatting, laughing people and unruly but happy children. A few of them offered me roasted hot dogs and marshmallows and beers, and I filled my belly smiling. I was rolled up in my sleeping bag before the last light from the dying embers faded away. The second night didn't go so smoothly. I woke up late, well rested but still groggy, and took my time repacking my tent. I hesitated at first, wondering if I should just stay there, but at 3 PM another family showed up with proof that they had reserved the site. So I gathered my things and set off and immediately got lost. Navigating the map and compass for the first time and alone is a lot harder than it sounds. And the trees can be misleading, make you think you're on the right path when really you're miles away from where you're supposed to be. Instead of taking me 3 hours to get to the site, it took nearly twice that time, and I was swiftly losing what little light I had left in the day. Finally, I have found the site, but before I breathed a sign of relief, I quickly set up my tent, building a small fire in front of it. It was dark and I was jumpy. Every sound I heard was seemingly magnified. I crawled into my tent and curled up in my bag, trying to will myself into sleep. After a while, I was dozing, about to drift off when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a foot crunching outside. My eyes shot open and I reached for my flashlight, but it didn't turn on. I waited, heard the sound again. Someone or something was definitely walking around my tent, and it sounded like they, whatever they was trying to be quiet. Stealthy. That went on for hours in inconsistent bursts when I finally decided it was an animal. Scavenging for the scraps or inspecting my tent. By dawn I was dozing off again and the noise had finally stopped. I told myself I would sleep for an hour or two, give myself time to rest up. I woke up disorientated, exhausted, and started to panic before remembering I was out camping, that I needed to start hiking back now. But when I left the tent, I saw that the sun was already setting. To say I was upset would be an understatement. I hesitated for a moment, trying to decide what to do. I decided I wanted to go home. I wanted to leave, see how far I could get out there, but deep down, I knew I'd instantly get lost and probably end up in a worse situation. So I began collecting as much wood as I can to build a big ass fire and prepared to hunker down for the night. The light from the sun seemed to disappear very fast. The third night was, problematic. I sat awake in my tent for hours after the sun went down, waiting. I'd left the fire going for as long as the wood lasted. I knew this wasn't kosher for camping, but I was improvising and I was absolutely terrified. The darkness around me seemed to crush the light from the fire, making it seem small, pathetic, tiny candle in a vast sea of shadows. For hours I sat there, listening, afraid. Finally I realised I was being ridiculous, and that what I had heard the night before was nothing to fear. That my subconscious, my monkey mind was just playing tricks on me, keeping me alert for no reason. So I bundled myself up and laid down, and I heard it. Softly at first, footstep, and 2 and 3, growing louder, bolder. I sat up and felt my eyes increase to the size of saucers. My breath quickened. What was that? I had to know. I wasn't thinking. I was operating purely out of fear. I heard the noise. It sounded like something was running and running around my tent. Suddenly, the side of my tent pushed in as if someone was slapping it from the outside. "Hey!" I yelled, scared out my wits. "Hey, I'm awake, I'm in here." I tried to stand, tripping myself in the sleeping bag in the process. Slammed into the front of the tent. Scrambling up, I swiftly unzipped the flap and ran outside with a red tinted flashlight. I saw a shape scurry away and followed. And there, standing at the edge of the firelight, barely visible, was a silhouette of a person. They were standing with their back towards me. Their arms were hanging in strange positions by their side. Their head was pointed straight away from me. I took a step towards them and a branch cracked underneath me. The sound seemed to startle the person and they turned their head ever so slightly. "Hey," I said. "What the fuck, man?" And it boiled up. The sound that crescended into a scream. It was laughter, and it echoed around me, rattling around in my skull. I ran, leaping into my tent, zipping it up behind me, hurling into my sleeping bag, crying. And the world around me exploded, or rather imploded. The walls of the tent shook, like hundreds of hands were slapping it, poking it, punching it. Outside, it sounded like dozens of people running around, shattered the silence. I don't know how or when I fell asleep. I think I fainted. Either way, I woke up the next day to a reddish glow encompassing my surroundings. I sat up and ran outside, looking around for proof of what I had heard. There was nothing. No footprints, handprints, or any disturbance at all. "Fuck this," I muttered to myself, throwing my things chaotically into my bag. I would leave today, in the dark. I couldn't stay here another night. I was just starting to unpeel the tent when I heard it. A sound in the distance, perhaps carried to me by the wind which is picking up around me. "Help me! Help me! Please! God! Oh God, help me!" I reacted more out of instinct than logic and began running towards the sound before realizing that I, in no way, wasn't placed to help whoever was screaming. Still, I tried to locate the source of the sound, followed the voice for about 30 minutes. "Where are you?" I yelled, looking around me through the maze of trees. "I'm here, where are you?" Quickly, the screams descended into a deep, unsettling laughter. Scared out of my mind, I turned and ran back the way I came. By some miracle, and made it back to my site, grabbed my pack and uprooted the poles of my tent, thinking that I would just roll it up and carry it back instead of taking the time to fold it neatly and shove it into the bag. Around me, the mountains are looped up like fangs, like I was about to be swallowed by the whole monstrous mouth. As I pulled each pole, the tent fell a little, but it was only on the 3rd pole out of 6. I realised it wasn't falling fully flat. Confused, I looked into the tent and reeled in horror, too afraid to even scream. There was someone sitting inside, but not just anyone. It was me. Sitting there, bone thin, too wide grin plastered on my face, a single droplet of blood rolled down from each eye, which instead of having green irises were totally unholy black. I jumped back, tripping over my own feet. Laughter rose up from around me as I scrambled and I saw that my hand, that was not so much my hand, reached out from the tent, followed swiftly by the other, then the head. My face that was not so my face looked up at me, still smiling, then laughed again. I screamed, I stood and I ran. I didn't even know if I was running the right way. I couldn't even use the sun anymore for guidance since it had almost fully set. I ran without looking where I was going. I kept looking behind me to see if that thing was following me. I could feel the trees scratching me up, pushing against me, like they were trying to hold me back, until that thing came for me. Suddenly, a light flashed in my face and I ran into something solid, something black, something that wrapped around me. I instantly cowered, hiding my face in my hands. Shit. Oh God, please, no, 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 no. I heard my own voice, terrified, shaking. "Hey, calm down, it's okay. You just scared me. Calm down, what's wrong?" I looked up and into the worried eyes of a human face. Human face of a middle-aged man who was holding me up. The flashlight he was using lay flattened on our feet, creating a strange shadow behind us. I looked back, fearful of what I might see, but there was nothing. Only trees swinging slowly in a slight breeze. "Hey," he said again, "what's wrong? I just came out here to check." I couldn't speak. I was too terrified. I shook my head. "Were you camping out there alone?" he asked, letting me go, bending down to retrieve his flashlight. I nodded and began crying. "Hey, it's okay. It can be spooky out there. Come on, my car is right over here. He gestured with his head back behind him. I wiped my nose and blinked, finally finding my voice. Who are you? He glanced at me then away. I'm a park ranger. But he didn't look like one. He was wearing a smooth black suit, black tie and a white shirt, and his shoes were polished leather, not hiking boots. Come on, he said, taking my pack and swinging it into his back. As he did, his jacket flapped slightly, and I saw what looked like a handgun strapped to his belt. Okay, I said, looking back behind me. How did you find me? I asked. He shrugged. Good hearing, he said. We entered a small clearing and I saw a matte black SUV with tinted windows, headlights flaring and the engine idling. Parked in the middle of it, he popped the trunk and threw my bag in as I climbed into the passenger side seat. He climbed into the driver's seat and asked me where he should take me. I told him the lot number and we were on our way. After a few moments, he pulled out a bag. Walnuts? He asked, holding out the bag to me. I took it gratefully and began chomping away. I licked my fingers and then looked back at him. Are you really a ranger? I asked. He looked at me and back to the road, but I still stared at him, transfixed. He looked exhausted, his wood-coloured hair dirty from the forest. The SUV came to a sudden stop and the man let out a slow, low breath. His eyes narrowed and he looked over at me and then back to the dirt trail in front of us. I followed his gaze, feeling the fear churning up inside me. And there, in the middle of the road, was me. The me that was not so me. Its limbs hung limply as if they were broken, and that sickly smile was still plastered across the face. The man looked back at me, and then back at the thing that was not so me, and then back at me, and I met his gaze. I don't get paid enough to do this shit, the man muttered before slamming his foot on the accelerator, straight towards that thing. We both felt the impact, and the car bounced over the body, and the man kept driving. Around us, in between the trees, stirred into the darkness, laughter boiled up, manic and persistent. We reached the lot in silence, bathed in the first light of rising sun. The man beside me seemed to be deep in thought. Distracted, I was still scared, hopeful that whatever that thing was, it was now dead, crushed by the car, or at least so badly wounded that it would soon die. The SUV slowed to a stop, and the man popped the trunk and hopped out. He walked to the back and then grabbed my pack and I jumped out. He handed it to me and I took it, and thanked him for everything. No problem, he said. All in a day's or night's work. His lips quivered as he was about to smile. I turned to leave, but he spoke up again. Hey, I turned to face him. You ever want to talk about what you saw, or just talk? Call me. He held out a card. I took it and looked down at it. It was a matte black card with only a single number written on it, and there was no area code. Thanks, I began. I heard a door slam and I looked up. The man was already back in his car. He waved at me and then sped off back the way he came, back towards that thing. I shoved the card in my pocket, climbed into my car and left, breathing a sigh of relief. I still haven't told anyone about what happened. Even when they asked why I refused to go camping ever again, I just shrug and tell them that it's not my thing. I prefer a warm bed and the bustling sounds of a busy city. Every so often though, I'll pull out the card, my fingers lingering over my phone and wondering if I should call. Wondering who the man really was and if he'd really be able to explain what happened to me.